Have you ever stopped to wonder if the very habit you believe is saving your life might actually be the one quietly stealing your future from right beneath your feet? My name is Dr. Sanjay Gupta. For 30 years, I have lived my life in the rhythmic hum of operating rooms across Atlanta, Georgia, standing under the harsh, white glare of surgical lights while the world outside slept. I have held the weight of 30,000 human lives in these hands. 30,000 stories of mothers, fathers, and grandparents who walked into my clinic with a flicker of hope and a mountain of pain. I have spent thousands of hours peering into the intricate architecture of the human body, seeing firsthand how time and gravity slowly erode the grace of our frames. But lately, there is a haunting pattern emerging in my surgical theater that keeps me awake long after the anesthesia wears off.
It is a quiet, devastating epidemic that no one is talking about, yet it is happening in every neighborhood, on every sidewalk, and in every fitness tracker on your wrist.
For decades, we, the medical community, the media, and the fitness giants, have preached a singular gospel, that walking is the ultimate protector of your health. We told you that if you just hit 10,000 steps a day, your heart would stay strong, your legs would remain sturdy, and you would outrun the shadows of aging. It was a beautiful, simple promise. But as a joint surgeon who has repaired over 12,000 seniors, I am standing here to tell you that this promise has become a profitable myth that is silently destroying millions of knees, hips, and spines after the age of 60. I have seen the reality of this myth under my scalpel, and it looks like sandpaper. I see seniors who have diligently walked every single day, only to show up in my office with fractured knees, inflamed joints, and cartilage so severely damaged that their bones grind together with a sickening sound every time they take a step.
They followed the rules, they bought the shoes, and yet their bodies are failing them. The truth is often uncomfortable, especially when there is $300 billion at stake. That is the annual value of the global walking and fitness market, a massive machine fueled by shoe brands, tracker companies, and pharmaceutical giants who profit every time you believe that walking alone is enough. They want you to stay on that treadmill wearing those expensive sneakers, even as your joints scream for a different kind of support. But as someone who has studied the biomechanics of aging for half a century, I can no longer stay silent while my patients suffer. Clinical research from institutions like Harvard and the Mayo Clinic is finally confirming what I have seen in the operating room. Walking is a repetitive impact exercise that, without the proper foundation of strength and balance, can actually accelerate the wear and tear on an aging skeleton. We are essentially driving a heavy vehicle on tires that have no air, wondering why the rims are starting to shatter.
I remember a recent Tuesday morning looking at a set of x-rays that belonged to a woman who had walked 5 miles a day for 20 years. Her knees didn't look like joints anymore. They looked like a battlefield. The smooth, pearly white cartilage that should have been there was gone, replaced by jagged bone and chronic inflammation. It broke my heart to tell her that her healthy habit was the reason she could no longer stand up to hug her grandchildren. This isn't just about medicine for me. It is a deep personal burden. I feel a profound responsibility to bridge the gap between what the industry sells you and what your body actually needs to survive and thrive. There are only 5 specific forms of movement, 5 surgeon-approved patterns that have been clinically proven to rebuild strength, protect your fragile joints, and extend your mobility by decades. These aren't just exercises, they are the keys to a house you thought you were losing.
In my 30,000 cases, I have seen that the human body possesses a miraculous ability to rewire and rebuild itself, provided it is given the right signals. We have found that these 5 specific movements can reverse muscle loss, improve vascular circulation, and reduce the risk of life-altering fractures by over 40%. They don't require a gym membership or a high-tech watch. They require an understanding of how your muscles and nerves communicate. I have transitioned from being a man who just fixes broken parts to a man who wants to prevent the break from ever happening. I want to take you on a journey through these 5 secrets movements so powerful that hospitals in Japan are now using them to restore leg power in post-surgical seniors 40% faster than traditional physical therapy.
I am stepping away from the operating table today to talk to you not as a distant specialist, but as a friend who has seen too much avoidable pain. I want to look you in the eye and ask, how many minutes have you spent today walking, believing you were doing the right thing while your muscles were actually getting weaker? We are going to peel back the layers of this $300 billion illusion together. I want to share the stories of people like Margaret, Robert, and Dorothy, real people who were on the verge of losing their independence until they discovered these 5 pillars of resilience. This is about more than just joints.
It is about the dignity of your later years. It is about the ability to move through the world with grace, without the fear of a fall or the agony of a grinding hip. Let us begin this healing journey with the first movement. Something so simple it starts with the very walls of your home, yet so profound it can change the density of your bones within months. As I sit in my study, the evening shadows stretching across the diplomas and medical journals that represent 30 years of my life, I cannot help but feel a heavy sense of irony. We live in an era of unprecedented connectivity, where every heartbeat is measured and every step is recorded by a glowing screen on your wrist. But as a surgeon who has performed 30,000 procedures, I see the dark side of this digital obsession. We have collectively fallen under the spell of a $300 billion industry, a colossal machine built by fitness tracker companies, athletic shoe conglomerates, and pharmaceutical giants. They have sold us a beautifully packaged dream that walking alone is the panacea for all aging woes. They want you to believe that if you just hit that magic number of 10,000 steps, you are immune to the ravages of time. But in the cold, clinical reality of the operating theater, I see the wreckage this myth leaves behind. I see the walking wounded, seniors who have dutifully pounded the pavement for miles, believing they were building health, while in reality they were grinding their cartilage into dust.
The industry profits from your persistence, but it rarely warns you about the biological cost of repetitive impact on an unsupported frame. When you walk without the necessary muscular foundation, every step sends a shockwave through your ankles, up to your knees, and into your spine. It is a slow, silent erosion. Orthopedic and vascular science now tells us a story that the marketing campaigns conveniently omit. Repetitive walking on aging joints is like driving a heavy truck on tires with no air. The rims begin to shatter and the axles begin to bend. I have looked into the eyes of countless patients who felt betrayed by their own bodies. They did everything they were told, yet they ended up on my table. This global fitness market thrives on the idea that more is better. But as a doctor who has spent 3 decades studying the microscopic jagged edges of worn-out bone, I know that smarter is better. We are witnessing an epidemic of joint failure precisely because we have prioritized quantity over quality and steps over strength. My heart aches when I see a patient who has spent a fortune on the latest tracking technology and the most cushioned shoes, only to find that their mobility is disappearing faster than ever. It is a profitable illusion, a cycle where the activity causes the pain and the pain leads to a prescription or a brace, further enriching the very systems that failed to provide a real solution. We must break this cycle. We must look past the $300 billion curtain and see the biological truth. Your body doesn't need more miles of friction. It needs the structural integrity that only specific, targeted resistance can provide. Science from Harvard and the Mayo Clinic is clear. The decline we once thought was inevitable is actually preventable, but not through the methods being sold to us on television. I am here to tell you that the path to a vibrant, independent life after 60 does not start on a treadmill. It starts with a fundamental shift in how we perceive movement, moving away from the step count and toward the clinical patterns that actually rebuild the human machine from the inside out. After 30,000 surgeries, you begin to see patterns that the textbooks don't always capture. You see the difference between a body that is merely moving and a body that is truly resilient. Out of the thousands of possible exercises that exist, from yoga to swimming to weightlifting, my team and I have distilled the essence of longevity into just 5 surgeon-approved movements. These are not just tips. They are clinical pillars designed to counteract the specific vulnerabilities that aging introduces into our biology. We are talking about a targeted intervention that addresses muscle loss, balance, circulation, and bone density simultaneously. From my perspective as a longtime researcher and practitioner, these 5 movements represent a bridge between the frailty of old age and the strength of a second youth. They are designed to trigger neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire its own motor control pathways, ensuring that your movements remain automatic and fluid rather than shaky and forced. The statistics are not just numbers to me, they are lives saved from the trauma of a hospital bed. When clinical studies show that these 5 specific movements can reduce fracture risk by over 40%, I see thousands of people who will never have to go through the grueling recovery of a hip replacement. We are looking at a 40% reduction in the very accidents that often mark the beginning of a rapid decline for seniors. This is about reversing sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, which can steal up to 5% of your strength every decade after 40 if left unchecked. Walking alone cannot stop this theft. It takes a specific type of stimulus, a surgeon-approved resistance that tells your body it is still needed, that it must remain strong. These movements are designed to be safer than walking, engaging twice as many muscle groups without the destructive impact on the joints. I want you to understand that you are not a victim of your age. Your body is a masterpiece of adaptation, waiting for the right instructions. Whether you are 60, 70, or 90, the biological mechanisms for repair are still there, just waiting to be activated. These 5 pillars, strength, balance, endurance, flexibility, and neural coordination, are the foundation of everything I teach. I have seen patients who were told they would need surgery find a new lease on life simply by practicing these patterns for a few minutes a day in their own kitchens. We don't need expensive equipment. We need the wisdom of orthopedic science applied with consistency and heart. In the following sections, I will pull back the veil on each of these movements. We will look at the shocking results from hospitals in Japan and the data from the most prestigious medical centers in America. This is your roadmap to a future where you are not defined by your limitations, but by your capabilities. Let us begin with the first pillar, a movement that builds the very armor your upper body needs to survive a fall. I remember Margaret Miller so clearly. She walked into my office in Portland, Oregon, with a quiet, dignified sadness that broke my heart. She was a 68-year-old retired teacher, a woman who had spent her life shaping young minds, yet now she felt like her own body was failing her in the most humiliating ways. She looked at her hands, gnarled slightly by the early stages of osteoporosis, and told me that she could no longer open a simple jar of pickles for her grandchildren. To a stranger, it might seem like a small thing, but to Margaret, it was the loss of her utility, a sign that she was becoming a burden. She had been walking 3 miles a day, believing she was doing everything right, but her upper body was withering. I told her, "Margaret, walking won't save your grip and it won't save your shoulders. We need to teach your bones to be strong again." I introduced her to the wall push-up with progressive resistance, a movement that most people dismiss as too simple, yet it is a powerhouse for senior health. According to research from the American College of Sports Medicine, seniors who engage in modified push-ups 3 times a week see a functional strength increase of 34% in just 8 weeks. Compare that to the mere 7% increase seen in those who only walk. For Margaret, this wasn't about building vanity muscles. It was about the core stabilizing muscles that allow a human being to catch themselves during a trip or push themselves up from a chair. We started with her standing arm's length from her kitchen wall, palms flat, leaning in until her nose nearly touched the surface. It is a controlled, safe movement that eliminates the risk of injury while forcing the bones in the arms and shoulders to increase their density. 6 months of this practice can lead to a 2.8% increase in bone mineral density, a vital shield against the fractures that haunt those with osteoporosis. Margaret started with 10 repetitions a day. At first, her arms trembled, a sign of muscles that had been dormant for too long. But within a month, the trembling stopped, replaced by a steady, quiet strength. She came back to see me 8 weeks later, and she didn't just walk into the room. She radiated a new kind of confidence. She reached into her bag and pulled out a jar, twisting the lid off with a single, effortless motion and a triumphant smile. "Doctor," she said, "I don't feel like a patient anymore. I feel like myself again." That is the power of the first pillar. It reduces the risk of rotator cuff injuries by 41%, ensuring that you can reach for the top shelf or push open a heavy door without fear. It is the beginning of reclaiming your territory. Margaret's story is a reminder that the tools for our recovery are often right in front of us, literally as close as the nearest wall. In the world of geriatric medicine, there is one movement that stands above all others as a predictor of your independence: the ability to move from a seated position to a standing one. It seems so mundane, something we do dozens of times a day without a second thought, until the day it becomes a struggle. I have seen the fear in the eyes of my patients when they realize they can no longer get off a low sofa or a toilet without gasping for air or grasping for a handrail. This is the result of a rapid decline in the quadriceps, the powerful muscles on the front of your thighs that can lose up to 40% of their mass between the ages of 50 and 80. If you leave these muscles untrained, you are essentially losing your engine. Walking, while good for the heart, is a poor mechanic for this engine. It maintains what you have, but rarely builds back what is lost. This is why I advocate for the chair squat with controlled tempo, a movement that is as much about safety as it is about strength.
A comprehensive study published in the Journal of Aging and Physical Activity found that seniors who performed regular chair squats improved their sit-to-stand time by 43%. This is a staggering statistic that translates directly to a 38% reduction in the risk of becoming disabled over a 2-year period. But the chair squat is about more than just the legs. It engages the entire posterior chain, your glutes, your hamstrings, and the deep muscles of your lower back that keep your spine neutral. When you perform this movement, you are also training your proprioception, your brain's map of where your body is in space. This prevents the clumsiness that so often leads to falls. By using a sturdy chair, we provide a safety net that eliminates the fear of falling backward, allowing the patient to focus entirely on the quality of the movement.
The secret to this exercise isn't in the up phase, it's in the descent. I tell my patients to lower themselves as if they are sitting on an egg they don't want to break, taking a full 3 to 4 seconds to reach the seat. This is eccentric training, and it is a miracle for the aging body. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that this slow, controlled lowering is 10% more effective at building muscle mass than standard exercises, and it does so with significantly less stress on the heart. It is the perfect exercise for someone who wants to rebuild their body armor without risking a cardiovascular event. When you master the chair squat, you are not just exercising, you are securing your right to live in your own home on your own terms for as long as possible. You are building the power to stand tall, literally and figuratively, against the passing of the years. I want to tell you about Robert Evans, a 71-year-old former mail carrier from Chicago. Robert was a man who had spent his whole life on his feet, but by the time he reached my clinic, he was spending most of his day in a recliner. He told me with a voice thick with emotion that the hardest part of aging wasn't the aches or the pains, it was the fact that he couldn't get down on the floor to play with his grandchildren. He felt like he was watching his life through a window, unable to participate in the joy happening just a few feet away. Robert was suffering from sarcopenia, the progressive loss of muscle tissue that turns a once strong man into a fragile one. I looked at him and said, "Robert, we are going to use the same techniques that the best hospitals in Japan use to restore leg power. We are going to bring you back to that floor." We started Robert on the controlled tempo chair squats. I watched him during those first few sessions. He was hesitant, his knees clicking, his breath shallow, but we focused on that slow 4-second descent, the eccentric phase that triggers muscle growth at a cellular level. In Japan, this specific method has been shown to restore mobility 40% faster than traditional physical therapy because it maximizes time under tension for the muscle fibers. For a man like Robert who had heart concerns, this was the safest path. Eccentric training produces less cardiovascular stress than quick, bouncy movements, making it a stealth way to build massive strength. Week by week, the clicks in his knees grew quieter as the muscles around the joints grew stronger, acting like a natural knee brace. After 3 months of daily practice, Robert didn't just walk into my office, he looked like a different man. He told me that he had finally made it down to the rug with his grandsons, building Lego towers and laughing for hours. He didn't need help getting back up either. The chair squats had given him back his vertical freedom. This exercise strengthens the exact muscles you use to climb stairs, get in and out of a car, or rise from a low chair. Robert's independence was no longer a fading memory, it was a daily reality. Beyond the physical, his cognitive function seemed sharper, a phenomenon science attributes to increased blood flow to the brain during lower body resistance training. Robert's story is a testament to the fact that it is never too late to reclaim your strength. The recliner doesn't have to be your final destination. It can be the starting block for your comeback. Fear is a silent thief. For Dorothy White, a 74-year-old librarian from Savannah, Georgia, fear arrived in the form of a minor trip on a sidewalk. She didn't break anything that day, but she broke her spirit. She stopped going to the library, stopped walking in the park, and stayed inside where the floors were flat and predictable. She was trapped in the vicious cycle of frailty. Moving less made her weaker, and being weaker made her more likely to fall. When she came to see me, her gait was hesitant, her eyes always scanning the floor for threats. I sat her down and told her about a startling discovery from the Mayo Clinic. The ability to stand on one leg for just 10 seconds after the age of 70 is one of the strongest predictors of longevity. It is associated with a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality. "Dorothy," I said, "your balance is your lifeline. We are going to build it back 1 second at a time." We began the single-leg stand with progressive challenges. Balance is not a static trait. It is a complex conversation between your inner ear, your eyes, and the tiny stabilizing muscles in your ankles. Dorothy started by holding onto her kitchen counter, lifting one foot just an inch off the ground. At first, she could barely hold it for 3 seconds before her ankle began to wobble violently. But that wobble is actually the sound of your brain learning. It is your proprioceptive system recalibrating itself. As she practiced for 5 minutes every day, her brain began to form new neural connections, a process of neuroplasticity that continues well into our 80s. According to the British Medical Journal, this simple habit reduces fall risk by 36% and improves walking speed by 12%, a vital sign that predicts everything from heart health to brain function.
Eventually, Dorothy graduated to standing without the counter, then to closing her eyes, and finally to standing on a soft pillow to challenge her system even further. The change in her was profound. She wasn't just standing steadier, she was standing taller. The fear that had clouded her eyes for months had vanished. 6 weeks into her training, she sent me a postcard from a hiking trail in the Appalachian Mountains. She was back in the world, moving with a confidence that she thought was gone forever. Her brain imaging would likely show increased gray matter in the areas responsible for spatial awareness. Dorothy's journey reminds us that balance is a skill we must defend with our lives, because in a very real sense, our lives depend on it. She stopped being a prisoner of her fear and became the master of her own movement. George Harris, a 69-year-old retired accountant, came to see me with a posture that told a story of 1,000 seated hours. He had developed a pronounced forward hunch, a medical condition we call kyphosis. But George didn't care about the name. He cared about the fact that he was constantly out of breath and his back felt like it was being pulled by lead weights. He felt ashamed of his old man appearance, often avoiding mirrors and social gatherings. I explained to George that his posture wasn't just a cosmetic issue. A study from UCLA found that seniors with excessive forward posture are 3.47 times more likely to need help with daily activities. Their mortality rates are 44% higher because the hunch compresses the lungs and the digestive system, making every breath a struggle. George, I told him, walking won't fix this. Gravity is winning the war for your spine, and we need to fight back. I gave George a simple resistance band and taught him the resistance band row. This movement specifically targets the rhomboids and the middle trapezius, the muscles that act as the suspension cables for your shoulders. Walking does nothing for these muscles, which is why so many lifelong walkers still end up stooped. The resistance band provides a variable tension that perfectly matches the strength curve of the human back. I told George to imagine he was trying to crack a walnut between his shoulder blades with every pull. This isn't just exercise, it's a structural realignment. Research published in the Archives of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation shows that seniors who do this 3 times a week can improve their posture measurements by over 3 inches and reduce chronic back pain by 58%. Within 2 months, George was a different man. His chest had opened up and his vital lung capacity had improved by 23% because his lungs finally had room to expand. He wasn't just standing straighter, he was breathing deeper, and his energy levels soared. People at his church began to ask if he had lost weight or been on vacation because he looked so much younger. But the real victory was in his confidence. George told me he felt like he could finally look the world in the eye again. The row had also strengthened his grip, another key predictor of longevity. George's story shows us that we don't have to accept the hunch as an inevitable part of aging. We can pull ourselves back from the brink of frailty and stand tall, reclaiming the space that gravity tried to take away. Barbara Thompson was a 77-year-old woman with a spirit that wanted to sing, but a body that felt like it was trapped in rusted armor. A longtime member of her church choir in Austin, Texas, she was terrified that her worsening knee osteoarthritis would soon force her into a wheelchair. She had tried every injection, every pill, and every physical therapy routine, but the pain remained a constant grinding companion. When she came to see me, she was desperate for a solution that didn't involve more surgery. I looked at her and suggested something that felt like the opposite of modern medicine, Tai Chi. I told her about a landmark Harvard study of 1,200 seniors over 5 years. Those who practiced Tai Chi for just 20 minutes, 3 times a week, reduced their fall risk by a staggering 47%, outperforming every other form of exercise combined. Barbara, I explained, Tai Chi isn't just movement, it's neural rewiring. Unlike the repetitive mechanical nature of walking, Tai Chi requires constant weight shifting and total body coordination. Every movement is slightly different, which forces the brain to stay in a state of active learning. This constant novelty triggers neuroplasticity, creating new pathways in the motor cortex and the hippocampus. For someone like Barbara, whose joints were inflamed, the slow, flowing nature of Tai Chi was a blessing. It weight bears without the thud of walking, increasing bone density by 2.6% annually, a complete reversal of the typical 1% annual loss seen in sedentary seniors. But perhaps most importantly, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing cortisol levels by 31%. Chronic stress is a poison that accelerates muscle loss and bone decay. Tai Chi is the antidote. Barbara began her practice in a small park near her home. At first, she felt clumsy, but slowly, the fluidity began to return. A study in the New England Journal of Medicine showed that Tai Chi is more effective than traditional physical therapy for knee pain, and Barbara was living proof. After 3 years of practice, she hasn't fallen once. She tells me she feels more graceful now at 77 than she did at 50. The grinding in her knees has quieted, replaced by a sense of ease and stability. She is back in her choir loft, her voice and her body in perfect harmony. Barbara's journey proves that we can find healing in the most unexpected places. We don't have to fight our bodies. We can learn to flow with them, using ancient wisdom to solve modern problems. She didn't just find a way to walk again, she found a way to dance through the rest of her life. We have traveled a long road together through these stories, and as I stand here at the end of this journey, I want to speak to you with the absolute honesty of a man who has seen 30,000 futures. The old model of aging, the one where we quietly accept a slow descent into weakness, where we believe that just walking is enough to keep us safe, is dead. Science has handed us a new map, one that shows that decline is not a destiny, but a process that can be interrupted, challenged, and even reversed. I have shown you the power of the wall push-up to protect your bones, the chair squat to secure your independence, the single leg stand to conquer your fear of falling, the resistance band row to open your lungs, and the grace of Tai Chi to rewire your very brain. These are the 5 pillars of your second youth. They are simple, they are accessible, and they are grounded in the most rigorous clinical research our world has to offer. My advice to you is not just professional, it is deeply personal. I want you to stop counting steps and start counting the quality of your movements. I want you to look at your body not as a machine that is wearing out, but as a masterpiece that is waiting for a restoration. Every day you wait to incorporate these 5 movements is a day your muscles continue to waste and your balance continues to erode. But every day you choose to practice them, even for just 10 or 15 minutes, is a day you are actively building a fortress around your health. You have seen the transformations of Margaret, Robert, Dorothy, George, and Barbara. These are not miracles. They are the predictable results of applying the right stimulus to the human frame. You possess that same potential within you right now, regardless of your current aches or pains.
I am calling you to action today. Do not let another sunset pass without reclaiming a piece of your strength. Stand up from your chair with intention. Push against the wall with purpose. Balance on one leg while you wait for your tea. These small acts are the bricks that will build your future independence. You have the knowledge, now you must have the courage to apply it. Your future self, the one who is 80, 90, or 100 years old and still walking, still laughing, still playing with grandchildren, we'll look back at this moment and thank you for starting. This is your life, and it is far too precious to be surrendered to the myth of inevitable decline. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel the spark of hope that I have tried to light, I invite you to join our community. We are a movement of seniors who refuse to go quietly into the shadows. Please subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss another piece of life-saving research. Share your stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your victories inspire me to keep fighting for you. Let us walk this path together, not in fear of our joints, but in celebration of our strength. Your journey back to vitality starts the moment you decide that you are worth the effort. Thank you for listening, and may you move with grace and power for all the days of your life.